Sergio Perez's signing of a new multi-year contract did not go as planned, and talk over his Red Bull future has reappeared. After a new Q1 departure at Silverstone, followed by finishing the rain-affected race 2 laps behind winner Lewis Hamilton, Perez is under severe pressure, with Red Bull keeping a close eye on the Constructors' Championship, their supremacy presumably over. However, is Sergio Perez still the best Red Bull fit? Since Daniel Ricciardo was reinstated at Red Bull, the focus has been on determining whether he has what it takes to compete alongside Max Verstappen. Over the previous year, Ricciardo has shown flashes of his old self, but he has primarily had to play second fiddle to Yuki Tsunoda. Tsunoda does not appear to be a suitable contender to replace Sergio Perez. Therefore, there is nothing to lose by getting the Ricciardo question resolved. Perez is unable to break out of his annual downward spiral, and after 3 years, the heroics he did on Verstappen's behalf in Abu Dhabi are no longer enough to buy him time. With the Constructors' Championship actually under threat this year, with Red Bull fielding one strong driver against 2-car teams at Mercedes, McLaren and Ferrari, it's time to remove Perez from the first row and replace him with Ricciardo for the next 10 races of the season. If he thrives, keep him through 2025. If not, at least Red Bull's long-standing question has been answered. Perez is not thriving under pressure. He has demonstrated in the past that he is a very strong and capable middle driver, and the V-carb environment may suit him better. If he can't handle the humiliation of a mid-season demotion or decides to pursue a new challenge elsewhere, Red Bull isn't short on options. Liam Lawson is waiting in the wings, and Red Bull junior Isack Hadjar is making a strong case for himself as he leads the Formula 2 Championship. However, my understanding is that Lawson's shooting day speed significantly underwhelmed Red Bull, with his quickest benchmark time being 0.2 slower than Verstappen's weekend benchmark. His prospects of securing a spot with either Red Bull squad may thus depend on how Perez performs in the final 2 races before the summer break. I believe there will be significant changes to the Red Bull driver lineup, and this is Perez and Ricciardo's last chance. Fresh faces will join one or both of the teams in 2025, and the next 10 races of this year provide a comprehensive study of how other drivers may fare, all with little risk given Perez's recent performance. If an inside hire does not meet Red Bull's needs, Carlos Sainz remains available. Perez's skid into the gravel in Q1 led to his early retirement and 19th spot on the grid for Sunday's Grand Prix. After switching to slicks on a drying track, Perez corrected a wobble on his outlap at Copse and went into the runoff, where he gradually lost control. The rear turned around, and he crashed backward into the gravel. "I put my hand up. I f***ed up today. Tomorrow is a new day," Perez said on Saturday. Really tricky, very difficult, especially in the beginning, as I was trying to warm up the tyres going into turn 9, Copse. When I downshifted, I basically lost the rear end quite badly, and I went out of the track on cold tyres, and it was completely sunk of water outside of the track, so I just ended up going into the gravel. I couldn't stop the car, I couldn't go straight. A very unfortunate incident. Let's say Perez suffers in Hungary and Belgium, allowing Red Bull to cut connections. Daniel Ricciardo should be promoted as a stopgap. Since his mid-season return in 2023, Ricciardo hasn't exactly outperformed teammate Yuki Tsunoda in terms of performance, but Ricciardo was always only a placeholder, wasn't he? Let's cap off 2024 by elevating the Australian to a minor league bench spot. That frees up his V-carb slot for Liam Lawson, a driver who deserves to compete in Formula 1. Lawson demonstrated his ability behind the wheel of an F1 machine while filling in for an injured Ricciardo last year. But it's best to give him some time to fully grasp the subtleties of the sport before pressuring him for a place alongside the soul-crushingly competitive Max Verstappen. Save that for 2025, when Ricciardo will be able to gracefully retire. However, Perez's error, which resulted in one top 10 start in the preceding 6 Grand Prix, is not an isolated occurrence. To make matters worse, he is on the verge of losing his Red Bull seat. Perez only signed a new Red Bull contract to the end of 2026 a month ago, but it is a 1+1 with performance requirements, and Red Bull has shown a readiness to replace drivers at any time if necessary. His form had already deteriorated by the time the new contract was unveiled, which surprised many, despite team manager Christian Horner saying it made absolute sense at that point in time. Horner stated that "we thought the contract would help, but the downturn has persisted relentlessly. This is a sport where there's no hiding. particularly with Max Verstappen as your teammate. He knows he's being measured against the very best, and we need him up there supporting Max, because there's 2 McLarens now up there, there's 2 Ferraris, there's 2 Mercedes, and we need there to be desperately 2 Red Bulls. Liam Lawson is driving his first test in Red Bull's 2024 Formula One vehicle today, drawing parallels with Daniel Ricciardo's pivotal run last year, amid the likelihood of another mid-season driver change. Ricciardo was promoted to Red Bull's second team a year ago, replacing Nick de Vries after a successful test with the 2023 Red Bull RB19. This time, Red Bull Racing may face an unexpected move, as underperforming Sergio Perez under increasing pressure to preserve his position. While Perez has 2 races before the summer break to turn around his bad form, Lawson has a perfect opportunity to press his claim with this Red Bull adventure and another test at the end of the month in a 2022 RB vehicle. That makes this a potentially critical month for Red Bull and its drivers, although Lawson's testing will be vastly different from Ricciardo's a year ago. Lawson will be banned from running in the 2024 Red Bull at Silverstone on Thursday because to a promotional event, sometimes known as a filming day in F1. This is one of the few opportunities to test a modern F1 vehicle during the year, in addition to pre-season and post-season testing. Though such events are formally classified as purely for marketing or promotional purposes, they are routinely used by teams to evaluate a variety of factors. They are, for example, employed early in the year to test new vehicles. In this case, Red Bull refers to it as an aero test for Lawson, which has been planned for some time. This is not the same as Ricciardo's test last year, when Red Bull exploited a separate section of the rules to test current cars, hiring him for a Pirelli tyre test. The guidelines allow the FIA and Pirelli to test both existing and new compounds. This is more useful for driver evaluations than for the team itself, because the car can only use components and software from a test or race weekend that season or the previous year, and no test parts or component changes that provide any sort of information to the team unrelated to the tyre test are allowed. That made Ricciardo's test more about Pirelli, while also offering him the opportunity to drive the 2023 Red Bull, allowing the team to examine him up close. But Red Bull's statements at the time indicate that it was at least aware of Ricciardo's qualifying simulation. This enabled it to make early comparisons with its racing drivers' performances at the previous British Grand Prix, proving that Ricciardo was worth putting in its second team RB rather than Nick de Vries. Red Bull has claimed that it desperately wants Perez, who has been out of form for some time, back at the top of the Formula One field. Another race weekend has passed at the British Grand Prix, with Max Verstappen racing alone against increasing resistance, continuously battling 2 McLarens and 2 Mercedes. So, what do you think? Will Sergio Perez be switched this season, or we will see a comeback from him and secure his place? Let us know in the comments down below.